A major new development in the Dominion lawsuit against Fox. On January 4th, 2021, just 2 days before the insurrection of the U.S. Capitol, Tucker Carlson texted a Fox employee, quote, "We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights. I truly can't wait. I hate him passionately. I blew up at Peter Navarro today in frustration. I actually like Peter, but I can't handle much more of this." He went on to say, "At this point, Trump and Lynn and Powell have so discredited their own case and the rest of us to some extent that it's infuriating. Absolutely enrages me." The Fox employee responds, "It really explains why the left wins so much. They have Mark Elias and lawyers from every major firm. We have Linwood and Powell." To which Tucker responds, "That's the last 4 years. We're all pretending we've got a lot to show for it because admitting what a disaster it's been is too tough to digest. But come on, there really isn't an upside to Trump." Wow. Tell you what, when the cameras are off, you couldn't tell some of these Fox hosts from a text thread between Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes. And before we dive into these texts, here's an entertaining tidbit. Trump obviously didn't read the news because here's his latest post on Truth Social after that Tucker news broke. "Great job by Tucker Carlson tonight. The Unselect Committee of Political Hacks and Thugs has been totally discredited. They knowingly refused to show the videos that mattered. They should be tried for fraud and treason, and those imprisoned and being persecuted should be exonerated and released now." Because if there's one thing that the world's most fragile ego will appreciate, it's knowing that he just complimented the guy who we all know shit all over him. Sometimes you can find poetry where you least expect it. But Trump's stupid posts aside, it really is amazing to yet again get more proof that these Fox hosts knew full well just how ridiculous these conspiracy theories and the clowns who promoted them were in private texts, and yet in public, they were perfectly happy to sell that same bullshit that they laughed at privately to their viewers. And we already know from previous texts that Tucker knew that his own audience believed what they were selling. He texted Laura Ingraham, quote, "Sidney Powell is lying, by the way. I caught her. It's insane." Ingraham responded, "Sidney is a complete nut. No one will work with her. Ditto with Rudy." To which Carlson responded, "Our viewers are good people and they believe it." And they believe it. Did that stop Tucker Carlson from allowing that stuff on air? Well, actually, yes. Tucker decided to take the responsible approach and only promote information that was fully vetted. I'm just kidding. Keep platforms straight dog shit like this.
Well, of course, you will likely recognize our next guest. His name is Mike Lindell. He runs MyPillow. He advertises every night on this show and across Fox News. He's one of our biggest sponsors, and we are grateful for that. He is sponsoring free speech when he does it.
With this particular thing that's going on now, I've been all in trying to find the machine fraud, and we found it. We have all the evidence. So what all these outlets that have been calling me from the Washington Post, New York Times, every outlet in the country, they go, "Mike Lindell, there's no evidence and he's making fraudulent statements." No, I have the evidence. I dare people to put it on. I dare Dominion to sue me because then it would get out faster.
Voter fraud is a direct attack on our democracy. But the media don't want to know. They're not interested. If you watch the coverage after the press conference today, you saw credentialed reporters, some of whom we know and like, actually, refuse even to acknowledge it. No mention whatsoever of the contents of what they described as, quote, what he says are sworn affidavits. What he says? Well, why don't you check? Giuliani says that this affidavit from Detroit has been made public, but they can't be bothered to check. Instead, they launch into editorials about how dishonest and crazy Rudy Giuliani is, as if their job was to rebut Rudy Giuliani. But that's not their job. Their job is to explain what just happened, preferably with some detail so that viewers at home can make up their minds. They didn't do that. Behavior like this does not help anyone. It diminishes the news media's tiny remaining reserve of credibility. It certainly doesn't inform the public. On some channels, of course, informing the public is last on the list of concerns.
So when Tucker pretends like he's some moral authority, give me a break. The guy knew exactly what he was airing, and he knew his audience believed it, but he didn't care, because Fox has nothing but disdain for the marks that tune into that network. And as far as these new texts go, one part that stuck out at me was when this Fox employee wrote to Tucker, "It really explains why the left wins so much. They have Mark Elias and lawyers from every major firm. We have Linwood and Powell." And they're right that Linwood and Sidney Powell are clowns. But the left doesn't win because they've got good lawyers. The left wins because the right's argument is imaginary. Like, what are we even talking about here? The right was claiming that the election machines were rigged by a dead Venezuelan dictator and the ballots were swapped out with Chinese bamboo. That's why the right lost. They lost because their claims were all complete and utter bullshit. Is Mark Elias one of the best out there? Absolutely. Do you need the best lawyer when the opposition is claiming that Hugo Chavez was rigging an election several years after his death? Probably not. Tucker would then go on to say the most important part of this whole revelation, which is, quote, we're all pretending that we've got a lot to show for it because admitting what a disaster it's been is too tough to digest, but come on, there really isn't an upside to Trump. And it took a private text message, but we actually got a moment of honest-to-God truth from one of the most insidious liars on television. Donald Trump took office with full control of government. Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the White House. Fast forward just a few years later, Republicans have lost the Senate, they've lost the House for 4 years, and only now have a 9-seat razor-thin majority. Republicans lost their trifecta in Arizona, and watched Democrats gain trifectas in Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Minnesota. Republicans lost gubernatorial races and Secretary of State races in every battleground state. And of course, Donald Trump himself lost re-election, the first incumbent president to lose re-election since George H.W. Bush in 1993. The idea that Republicans are in better shape politically now than before Trump took office is as backwards as Tucker's worldview. And yet, if Tucker and Republicans are mad that they don't, quote, got a lot to show for it, that's entirely on them. Because what was actually rejected at the ballot box was the very extremism, the very deceitfulness, the very bullshit that these people themselves were peddling. I mean, my God, the whole clown car from Powell to Giuliani to Bannon, all being propped up by people like Tucker and Hannity and Ingram and Bartiromo, is precisely what Americans didn't want. And yet they're all so thick-headed that no one thinks they deserve any blame here. Tucker's pretending like it's all Trump's fault while he was spouting the same bullshit that he was condemning in private. The funny thing about the party of personal responsibility is that no one can actually manage to take any. But at the end of the day, there is a reason why these Fox hosts like Tucker, like Hannity, like Laura Ingraham continue to do this, because their viewers won't ever know the difference. Even to this day, with all of this new information being revealed right now, still their audience will be none the wiser because all they watch is Fox and Fox will never tell them. And so the people who most need to hear about it never will. And then those same people who are the victims of Fox's lies will remain the victims of Fox's lies because the propagandists will make sure that you never know you're being subjected to propaganda. It's a vicious cycle, and the only people who lose here are the ones gullible enough to trust the same Fox hosts who know how easy it is to manipulate their own viewers. So if you have friends or loved ones who are subjected to this stuff and who won't listen to you, who won't listen to me, maybe they'll listen to the Fox hosts themselves who in just the latest batch of text messages betray not just how much they were willing to lie to their own audience, but that they knew full well that their audience would believe it. Maybe they'll believe the words that came out of these own people's mouths when they thought that they could actually speak freely. Because it doesn't exactly leave much room for doubt when you've got Tucker and Hannity and Ingram all effectively admitting that the very content they were promoting on air was so dumb that these people were left in abject humiliation. And yet at no point did that stop them from peddling it out to their audience on air. Because look, I know the GOP loves telling their audience that the left hates them, but to be perfectly honest, no one has more contempt for their own supporters than Republicans. Before you go, a quick announcement. I've started a Spanish YouTube channel. Democrats desperately need to be able to appeal to Spanish-speaking audiences, so this is me doing my part. To help that channel get going in the algorithm so that we can finally start spreading our progressive message and breaking the conservative stranglehold on Spanish-speaking media, please subscribe and watch a few videos. The link to that channel, called Brian Tyler Cohen Espanol, is right here on this screen. And of course, to see more of my content in English, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. The link is also right here on this screen. Thanks so much for watching.